Excuse me, please, if I could have your attention. Excuse me. We welcome everyone to our board meeting of tonight, Tuesday, May the 1st. For your information, this meeting is audio and video recorded. Before we begin, we know that we have extra people, and I'm sorry there aren't enough seats. A number of the students are coming for the anti-bullying presentation, so we're going to take that presentation first this evening, and so that way those students and their parents who wish to leave may do so, and they won't be waiting for as long. And of course, if you wish to stay for the entire meeting, we're happy to have you. So we will begin with the opening prayer, the national anthem, and the oath of citizenship from our trustee, Anna Maria.
In the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. The Lord is a refuge for the oppressed, a stronghold in times of trouble. Those who know your name trust in you, for you, Lord, have never forsaken those who seek you. Lord our God, we look to you in our many needs, in the distress of our hearts, in the anguish of the whole world. We beseech you, let light come to your people everywhere on earth, to bring them your help and your victory. Remember the wretched, the sick, the poor. Let your living strength come to them, so that they can bear their sufferings, and hold out joyfully to the end. Remember us all, O Lord our God, for we all need you. We are weak and poor, and cannot go forward alone. Your Spirit must help us. May the Savior come to us, and may his grace and his power be born in our hearts. Amen. Father.
Thank you, and welcome again to our board meeting. We would ask that during the different parts of our board meeting, the different presentations, you may hear opinions that you agree with and opinions that you do not agree with. However, we are respectful to all within our walls, and we must ask that we all maintain a decorum with regard to that. Thank you. Motions adopted in camera. Vice Chair Marai.
There are quite a few, Madam Chair. Angela Bellicastro, retiring effective April 30th, 2018. Elizabeth Bond and Irene Nixick, retiring effective June 1st, 2018. Kevin Brady, Claire Dario, Diane Duran, Kelly Ferguson, Eileen Haller, Diane Lynn Johnson, Carolyn Lutic, Douglas McDougall, Natalie Marquez-Piet, Claire McDermott, Mary Muller, Elisa O'Hare, Sandra Osborne, Marianne Scheme, Douglas Whitford, and Laura Woodstock, retiring effective June 30th, 2018. Vincent Quaranto, resigning effective August 31st, 2018. Jane Moth Arsenault, appointed as special consultant, effective September 1st, 2018, for a period of up to 3 years, with a possibility of a 1-year extension. And Nicole Boucher, appointed as special education consultant, effective September 1st, 2018, for a period of 1 year. Department heads: David Agro, Sarah Armstrong, Dean Castellan, Alexandra Johnson, Ryan Duffy, Lisa Hayes, Jared Roussel, Susie Joseph, Valerie Kulinik, Natasha Kuzmar, Bruce Law, Michael McDonald, Bruce Mazar, Antonio Mule, Marisa Monroe, Danielle Orlando, Eduardo Perion, Susan Rowland, Mark Shaw, Michael Silvello, and Linda Van Osten, appointed as department heads effective September 1st, 2018, for a period of up to 4 years. And Aldona Bobulis, Emily Leota, and John Cossier, appointed as acting department heads effective September 1st, 2018, for a period of up to 1 year. Sonia Snyder, appointed as acting elementary school principal effective September 1st, 2018. And David Fitzpatrick, appointed as elementary school vice principal effective September 1st, 2018.
Thank you very much, Vice Chair Marai. Approval of the agenda. Any additions for the agenda? Trustee Quinn.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, I have a notice of motion to make. I'm bringing back the salary grid for senior officers motion. Salary grid for senior officers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And it's my pleasure this evening to welcome all the recipients and to share the good news with the board. In terms of our award winners for the Bullying Prevention Awards for this year, 2017-18, See the Problem, Be the Solution. Again, I'd like to thank publicly our student trustees, Christina, who's not with us today, but has been involved along with Ingrid, and of course Anna Maria, who continue to lead this initiative with our board and our region. And their leadership is invaluable in terms of getting us moving and continuing with this successful initiative. We all are committed to bullying prevention in our board. Our students in grades 6 to 12 are challenged to come up with creative arts-based public service messages, and we promote healthy relationships and inclusion to prevent any type of bullying occurring in our schools. So as always, as we started years ago, we recognize the best poster, the best original song, and the best video for our board. During this school year, again, we continue to be very successful in engaging our students. So this year we had 37 of our elementary schools participate and 7 secondary schools participate, with approximately 274 students getting involved in their submissions. On April the 5th, all participants were invited to Jean Vanier to review all the entries. Now, the interesting part this year was we came into the 21st century. We actually opened up the voting to all students in grades 6 to 12. They could go online rather than doing hand ballot counting that we have done in the past. So that was really interesting in terms of involvement of our students, and it was really a real success. So again, I want to thank the staff advisors that were involved along with our student trustees that moved us in that direction. So this evening we're here to acknowledge and recognize the winners that the students voted for, not the staff, not the adults, but the students. And so we'd like to begin with our best original poster, and it's up on the video as well as over in the back in a hard copy, and it was St. Thomas Aquinas. And I'm not sure if anyone is here for St. Thomas Aquinas because we had heard earlier that the participants were sick. So, and they're not, is anyone here from St. Thomas Aquinas? No? So we want to congratulate St. Thomas Aquinas on this wonderful. Next is our best original song, and we're going to show this. And so we'd like to call on the students from St. Teresa of Calcutta, if they could step up and take a picture. No, we don't have everyone here, so if we could have them. Yes, we have a plaque for them. Congratulations again. And the next category is Best Original Video, and we're going to show this one. representatives, please. If we can please join me in congratulating not only our winners, but all the participants in this year's contest. Congratulations to everyone.
Thank you very much. Congratulations, and thank you to your teachers and your coaches, and thank you, Ms. Pinelli, for your work in this matter. So we'll give the ladies, if they wish to leave, a moment or two. We're happy to have you stay for the evening, but we understand if you have to go back to Georgetown. No problem. Okay. Our next presentation is St. Mary's Historical Signage for St. Andrew Church. And it's Ms. Murphy. Welcome.
Good evening, and thank you for the invitation to speak briefly about the installation of a new historical sign marking the role St. Mary's School and Father Jeremiah Ryan played in helping to endow us with the gift of Catholic education not just in Halton, but in all of Ontario, from the primary to the post-secondary levels. I was actually delighted tonight not only to see a lot of people here who I knew, but to be reacquainted with someone that I taught with many, many years ago, Superintendent Pinelli. Fittingly, the new sign will be officially unveiled next Tuesday during Catholic Education Week. In the words of the special prayer, we walk in faith and thanks, guided by those who have gone before us, who nurtured and sustained Catholic education. We have much to commemorate here in Halton. Upon his arrival as the first resident pastor at St. Andrew's Parish in 1859, Father Ryan immediately set about building a school for the community. No one-room schoolhouse for Oakville. The two-story clapboard building, completed in 1860, predates any other school in Dufferin County, Peel County, and of course in Halton. Father Ryan also purchased the southwest corner of King and Reynolds Streets and established a convent for the sisters who initially taught at St. Mary's. At points during the late 19th century, the convent also served as a school for children of all denominations. Father Ryan, an astute businessman, was a powerful advocate for taxpayers' dollars going to Catholic schools, as can be seen in his lively, very lively, and extensive correspondence with Edgerton Ryerson. Upon his death, Father Ryan left a large sum to his nephews, Father Brennan and Father Patrick Ryan, who came from Ireland and became Basilian priests. With this money, Father Brennan purchased 50 acres of farmland in North Toronto, the eventual site of St. Michael's College School, thus Oakville's seminal role in secondary education in the province. Later, the sale of part of this same land funded the Kelly Library at the University of St. Michael's College. So Halton is also has a not insignificant connection with U of T. In 1880, 2 lots on the west side of Reynolds Street and extending from Lakeshore to Robinson, the recent location of Julia's Ristorante, were transferred from Father Jeremiah Ryan to Father Patrick Ryan, and then to the Diocese of Hamilton. In 1929, the diocese gave this land to the Oakville Catholic School Board, and in 1930, the board was able to replace the original St. Mary's with a larger brick structure. With post-war immigration and the arrival of the Ford plant, a necessary 4-room extension tripled the size of the school in 1953. The Depression was just one of the many challenging economic times faced by the Catholic community, who, despite their modest incomes, worked hard to provide a good Catholic education for their children. Despite these hardships, the close partnership of the Church, pictured here as a very young and fairly handsome Father Broman, the parents, the teachers, the board members, including my grandfather who served for 20 years, and the local community, all collaborating together, brought great success. This cooperation is beautifully recorded in photos of the many sacramental celebrations that took place for over a century and a quarter. It was also joyously reported in the Oakville paper, such as in the case of the confirmation on the evening of a power blackout. Bishop Ryan and 8 priests from across the diocese celebrated the ceremony for 78 children and adults at a flower-decked altar lit by dozens of wax tapers, according to the paper. The lights of a car pulled up to the open doors of St. Andrew's illuminated the main aisle for the hundreds of parishioners in the packed church. St. Mary's was a community hub, not just for parishioners, but for their neighbors too. It was a venue for meetings, bazaars, choir practices, as well as wedding and funeral receptions. Prior to the Oakville Arena, it was St. Mary's that provided the town with a skating rink and playground space for the entire community. There were even ice volleys. The community cooperation is evident in the fact that it was an Anglican businessman who tasked his workmen with flooding the rink every year and installing indoor plumbing in the original school. Even the formal pictures taken during the first half of the 20th century capture school life. For example, in this 1904 picture, the children stoically faced the chilly weather, evidenced by the snow and the icicles on the windowsill, to pose for what would have been a rare photo op. Their parents took full advantage of the opportunity by dressing the children in their Sunday best, and so while the boys kept warmer in their woolen jackets, the girls braved the elements in their dresses and pinafores. Unlike in the early shots that were proudly taken against the school facade, by the 40s, the photographers considered the backdrop of the beautifully treed playground more photogenic. St. Mary's was also the mother school from which new schools like St. James, St. Dominic's, and St. Vincent's found life. Then, in 1978, St. Mary's Anglophone students were moved to St. James and St. Vincent's schools, and St. Mary's became École Sainte-Marie, Oakville's first French language school. In 2012, a new Oakville school revived the name. And now people walking the historical trails in Oakville can read about the role that our faith and Catholic education have played in our community's history. It's wonderful to have the opportunity to remember the promise made 159 years ago in Halton, as we today, in 2018, renew that promise for us, for our children, and for all who are far away, everyone whom the Lord our God calls to him. Congratulations, and God bless.
Thank you very much for a beautiful presentation. Trustees, do you have any questions for our guests? Trustee Carabella?
Not a question, just a comment. Thank you for coming, and I really noticed so many people stopping to read those placards. Yes.
Thank you. Anyone else? No? It's a very, very beautiful church, and we're lucky to have a school there at one time. Thank you very much for your presentation. It was really beautiful. Thank you. All right, we're moving along now, and we're into delegations. 5.1, decline delegations. Declining delegations is not something we want to do, but we have to at some points. We have been very generous with delegations over the last few weeks, months, as some of you may know who have been with us. However, there has to be a balance between doing the work of the board and also hearing delegations, particularly those from our ratepayers. So 2 delegations were declined for this evening's board meeting. Following review of the delegations, although different subject matter, it was in regard to the same issue already presented to the Board of Trustees. The individuals who were declined were encouraged to submit their concerns in writing to the Chair and/or the Secretary of the Board, which would then be added as correspondence. So we certainly do appreciate having their input there. And our staff and our trustees will be reading on that. So we'll move on to 5.2, delegation 5.2, which is the opposition to Resolution 61-18. Ms. Gizé Blinken, and I apologize. Okay, thank you for being kind. All right, whenever you're ready.
I'm just going to use my laptop. Good evening, Chairman and members of the Board. My name is Cynthia Gizé Blinken. I am a mother of 2 boys who attend St. Joan of Arc in Oakville. I only heard about the Sanctity of Life motion through the media, and I couldn't get my head around how a Catholic board could wanted to put an end to donating to charities like Sick Kids. So I endeavored to understand the motives of the 5 trustees who support this motion. Trustee Quinn, I read your tweet on the editorial in the Catholic Register, and it gave me some insight, I think, as to why you feel like you're doing God's work. For the benefit of everyone else, the article states that public displays of Christian morality, can bring shaming and ridicule, that it takes courage to stay strong in a secular world, and I'd have to agree with this. The article stated that there was no whiff of respect nor hint of tolerance for the right of Catholic institution to act according to its religious beliefs. It further drew the correlation between the parents and the students' dissent on this motion and the huge amount of work still required to communicate the mission of Catholic education, but it focused on standing up for the right to life. The same article, and you'll see in my delegation, I actually confused the articles. It was the same article where Cardinal Thomas highlighted the plea to a group of teachers to prevent the watering down of faith in society. It was in response to questions of euthanasia. He said that Canadian society was getting colder and darker, and I do feel that way sometimes. The Cardinal sees large segments of Canadian society rejecting their Christian roots, and that Catholic students need to be exposed to the Bible, but that Scripture alone will not do the job, he said. I believe that as educators and board members, you are tasked with a difficult question. How do you reconcile an age-old Scripture to handle today's world? I don't envy you, and I think that's exactly what you're trying to do with this motion. I don't believe that either of you are opposed to donating to Sick Kids, or that any of you wouldn't take advantage of some of their life-saving services should your family need them. I think that your intention was to signify those Catholic values that you feel have been ignored. That if you did it quietly, you would feel a personal spiritual accomplishment. But you can't do it at the expense of the opinions and the support of the people you represent. Issues of euthanasia, abortion, and contraceptives, those can be taught. I apologize, my laptop's moving a little. But believing in pro-life alone does not make you a good Catholic. It addresses one aspect of Catholic thought. Mother Teresa's belief on this topic alone did not earn her the title of being one of the most respected Catholics in the world. The religious education course director said that when you see true Catholic faith, pure and true, it sets hearts on fire, and we need that in Catholic schools. There is no better way to see these hearts on fire than when you see hundreds of students walking in unison, wearing red, raising money for the Terry Fox Foundation, or wearing green and purple for Maddie, a student at St. Joan of Arc who died of a brain tumor. Mr. Danko, you may know of her. And raising money for cancer research at Sick Kids. One way in which our young children show an understanding and commitment to our Catholic faith is by coming together as a community, raising awareness and fundraising for initiatives that help the needy and the poor, just like Mother Teresa did. Our children learn easiest by relating. Our young children, like mine, don't know what abortion is yet, so it's not an option for me to fundraise with them on that. It's not relatable to them. Cancer is, autism is, humanitarian operations in developing countries are, diseases that are treated by Sick Kids and the Canadian Cancer Society, organizations that you have removed from the approved list. Has the Halton Catholic District School Board been running amok for this many years, fundraising for organizations that do not line up with the Catholic teaching? Have the staff, the superintendents, the
directors of education been so incompetent and unreasonable in the last several years that the five of you felt you needed to interject and save us? And I don't have such weak faith. I truly believe that if God was against all this, there would be no science in the world that would be able to overcome his power. No doctors, no medicine that could save a dying individual. I believe that God allows us to come together as a community to help others. God puts obstacles in our way to challenge us to be better people. What can we do for one another? Trustee Carabella, you clearly have a strong commitment to educating others on pro-life causes. You stand in front of hospitals with pro-adoption signs, and no one here is asking you to stop doing that. That is your calling. That is the way that you represent the values, the Catholic values that are important to you and to the Catholic Church. But we all have a role to play.
Excuse me, ma'am. If I could just ask you not to refer to individual trustees because they can't respond to you.
Oh, fair enough.
If you could just
So I will
speak to
read
all
this
of us.
out.
Thank you.
Speak to all of you.
Speak to all of us. Thank you.
Sure, no problem. If you truly believe that students are rejecting their Christian roots, then don't take away the only relatable activity that keeps them connected. Trustee Marai reported a couple of weeks ago that enrollment in the Halton Catholic District School Board had increased, but for how long? If we continue to polarize religion, we will have declining enrollment. In 2016 and 17, you proudly tweeted our participation in We Day, Canadian Liver Foundation, Alzheimer's Day, the fact that Canada was the fourth most charitable country in the world. Clearly, this is an important topic. But what happened between 2016 and present day that you can no longer support these charities because they potentially are affiliated with stem cell research? In 2016, you retweeted Lucas Medina's tweet about Canada opening its first foster care agency to support the LGBTQ youth. If you don't want me to address him directly, he was a huge supporter of rights for the LGBT community, and even though the board shot down the inclusive policy, you continue to allow their voices to be heard. The Catholic School Board had a responsibility to these youth to feel safe, and that is your calling. There was another tweet about an article about students' moral compasses being broken in the U.S., and there's a lot of truth to that. But when you put a group of LGBTQ students in the same room as their classmates, raising money for a mutually good cause like cancer, you break down that wall between them, and you allow them to celebrate their differences. When you put a group of pro-life students in the same room as their classmates, raising money to help find a cure for pediatric cancer, suddenly the value of life becomes more clear. They become friends, they talk, they have an opportunity to share their strong Catholic values. It saddened me to keep hearing about Canada summer jobs. How did a politically charged issue between two opposing political parties make its way into our school system? And how did we allow a member of the Conservative Party to wage a war openly on the government by exploiting our children? It was stated in the Globe and Mail that if the federal government wished to impose its beliefs on us, we were going to assert our morality where it was supposed to, which was in our schools. Who is this us and we? When anyone sits on this board, they do not work for the Conservative Party or any political party. The us and we are the students, parents, and the staff, not the charities that won't be able to benefit from these subsidies. It's not our fight. Don't use my children in your political gain. For me personally, this was the most abuse of power that offended me in this entire ordeal, even more so than which this motion was passed. I don't have to say much about Mother Teresa's legacy. She was one of the greatest humanitarians of the 20th century. Catholics and non-Catholics know what she stood for, and there's a reason for that. Even though she was a huge proponent of pro-life, she focused on helping everyone who needed it. In the 80s, she opened 2 homes in the U.S. for those who were infected with HIV and AIDS. And when a local reverend argued that AIDS was a result of immoral acts and implied that they were doing charity that indirectly violated the teachings of the church, much like what this motion is suggesting, church officials responded by saying that they are not condoning homosexuality, but are ministering to the dying as the church teaches. We too are not condoning abortion because we are raising money to help care for those who are dying of cancer. Pope John Paul II was an outspoken opponent of abortion, but he was also a supporter of Poland integrating with the European Union, and he believed that the Catholic future in Europe relied on the Poles' testimony of faith. Poland joined the EU in 2003. In the same year, Italy took over presidency of the EU. In the same year, the EU pledged $28 billion in humanitarian aid for Iraq. The Pope was such a huge opponent of the Iraq war that he became a candidate for the Nobel Peace Prize. And what's the relevance? Abortion was legal in Italy in 2003 and had been for over 20 years. At the same time, Iraq had a national policy on assuring access to family planning and contraceptives. Abortion was also legal in the event that a mother's life was in danger. Neither of these laws prevented even Pope John Paul II, who was a far more conservative pope than today's pope, from helping those in need and ensuring that Catholic presence in the secular world was not compromised. As Mr. Harvey said so eloquently in his delegation a few weeks ago, the two doctrines can coexist, and it was proven by Pope John Paul II himself. We are definitely being challenged and asked to define what it means to be a Catholic in this day and age. How do we apply the word of Jesus in everyday life? It's not by dividing us, and certainly not by a smaller group dictating which values are more important than others. You do not have divine authority. Let the Catholic faith resonate within all of us in different ways. And ask yourselves, does it feel right? We've been blessed with divine guidance. If Jesus stood in front of you, what would he say? Would he ask you to take humanity into account in all your decisions? Let's focus on kindness and support and pull us out of the darkness that Cardinal Thomas referenced. If you need to reflect and discuss this amongst yourselves, then please ask for a recess to do so. But not just on a temporary pause, but on putting this issue to rest for good and focusing on the business of true Catholicism as a community and not a divided one. And when you do, ask yourself, with all your best intentions, did you expect to cause so much upset in your community? Finally, Trustee Marai, you tweeted in 2016 that public consultations take such minimal effort. Engage and consult with those you serve. Show us that you are capable of doing just that. And if either of your intentions are to listen to this community you represent, if not, that's not your intention, then please don't represent yourself as Catholics because you believe in a subset of these values. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Trustees, do you have any questions for our delegate for clarification? No? Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much for coming. I didn't submit anything, but am I able to speak more? No, I'm sorry, no. If another time you would like to speak, perhaps you could just write into the... No, I'm sorry, no. We're happy to see you, but if you wanted to speak to the trustees, then you would have to apply for a delegate, but you cannot speak to the delegate unless you do that privately afterwards. I'd be happy to speak to you if you'd like to. Okay, if you'd like to go outside, then please have your conversation. All right, okay, we're moving on here. Moving on. Our next delegation is opposition to resolution 6118, and it is Ms. Ralph. Thank you very much. Just begin when you're ready, please.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, Chairman and members of the board. I would like to thank you for the opportunity to be here this evening. My name is Tova Ralph, and I am a wife and a mother to two amazing kids. I am here because we send our kids to Catholic school, not just for the theology, but for the community of faith and the charity that the Catholic school offers. While I can take them to church and teach them their lessons, I cannot alone provide that community. I sat in church last Sunday, listening to the homily on being a good shepherd. I believe that you all are passionate in your belief in the sanctity of life motion, which is being upheld without stakeholder feedback. But what I ask is, do you in your hearts believe that the way you went around getting this policy passed was being true to yourselves, your beliefs, and what the Catholic Church teaches us? I read Pope Francis's apostolic exhortation, rejoice and be glad. This had me thinking, what would the church think about the trustees on this board? From my understanding, the church was not consulted on this issue. If you truly believe that what is being done is just and right, then wouldn't you want the church to endorse it? What does the bishop think? The priests of the local churches? The vicar? Below are some of the key messages from Pope Francis's words. I like to contemplate the holiness present in the patience of God's people, in those parents who raise their children with immense love, in the men and women who work hard to support their families. In the daily perseverance, I see the holiness of the church militant. He is referring to the parents that sit at the bedside of their children in hospitals, the men and women who work hard but still need financial support for the communities. The church militant is the one that donates financially so that the stranger is able to have an MRI that may potentially help them from a potentially fatal disease. This is the equipment that is possible through local donation, the middle class of holiness. Paragraph 20. But it can also entail reproducing in our own lives various aspects of Jesus' earthly life. His hidden life, his life in community, his closeness to the outcast, his poverty, and the other ways in which he showed his self-sacrificing love. It leads us to incarnate them with our choices and attitudes. Our choices are to help others who cannot help themselves. Most of the New Testament is dedicated to teaching the responsibility of helping others, showing kindness, and living humbly among your community. Paragraph 21. For the holiness is nothing other than charity lived to the full. Paragraph 22. To recognize the word that the Lord wishes to speak to us through one of his saints. But not everything a saint says is completely faithful to the gospel. Not everything he or she does is authentic or perfect. What we need to contemplate is the totality of their life, their entire journey of growth in holiness, the reflection of Jesus that emerges when we grasp our overall meaning as a person. This, I believe, speaks to who credits the Catholic devotion strongly to only one aspect of Catholic faith, while doing a disservice to accepting Catholicism in its totality. 23. This is powerful summons to all of us. You do not need to see the entirety of your life as a mission. Try to do so by listening to God in prayer and recognizing the signs that he gives you. Always ask the Spirit what Jesus expects from you at every moment of your life and in every decision that you make. For months now, parents and students have sent you signs that they do not agree with Resolution 6118, that it contradicts the good work in the community that we have been doing for years, the work that Jesus himself, the Pope, and the Church have championed us to continue. My vocation is to be a wife and mother. It's my main priority and a 24/7 job. Our priests have a vocation to the Church, the people, and the world. They also live and breathe the Catholic Church. They are an important member of the Church. They are the ones on the front line, trying to uphold the Catholic Church stands for and believes in, working with the community to serve the community. Last week at my daughter's First Communion retreat, we learned many things. One being that the chasuble they wear, the priests, show them the charity of Christ. Over all these virtues, put on love, which binds the rest together and makes them perfect. Colossians 3:14. As trustees, this is your job. It's not your vocation. Yes, we thank you for your service to the community, but at the end of the day, this is a job. You leave when your term is up, you are done. You leave the business, politics, and school board behind. You hope to leave a positive legacy, or whatever noble mark you were able to accomplish. But don't let your legacy be the demise of the Catholic school system in Ontario by upholding Resolution 6118. By implementing this motion, I believe, as the Toronto Star recently reported, we are further igniting the debate about mixing public dollars and religious belief, and giving organizations reasons to question the need for religious schools. If you don't want to seek input from the Catholic Church or its leaders, why have a Catholic school system? As parents, we want to work with you. Of course, we don't want to directly fund abortion, contraception, sterilization, euthanasia, or embryonic stem cell research, but we do want to support our kids, our friends, and our families. When this was first addressed in February, the HCDSB supported 100 or so charities, and today that list has been cut into less than half, but I have not seen a confirmed list. Our children benefit most when schools are inclusive. How can we be inclusive when we can't donate to the services that as a community we have been so blessed to be helped by? Personally, my family has been touched by many services. My 5-year-old was a patient of sick kids before he was even born. The day I found out my son was going to be born with a cleft lip and palate, I was devastated. I cried the whole way home, unsure of the news I just heard. I remember my midwife calling me about 30 minutes later. She asked me how I was doing and had to inform me of my rights given the situation. She asked me if I wanted to terminate my pregnancy. She was not asking me because she was encouraging a termination, but that it was her duty to inform me of my rights, and she suspected my answer before I ever responded. I was shocked that people would terminate a pregnancy, but I understood. It's hard to have a child with differences, to see your child undergo pain. People judge you. I rejected any further testing, as I knew no matter what, my husband and I would love this child. I remember crying and being so angry with God. Why was my little boy going to have to suffer? What did he do wrong? What did I do wrong? The first time I held him in my arms, I forgot why I was scared and worried. I was still and knew God had placed this child in my life for a reason, and I was lucky to be his mom. At 5 months, he had his lip adhesion surgery, We anticipate at least 3 more surgeries before he's discharged at 18. And he's a healthy patient of sick kids. He has parents who can advocate for him. We are blessed to have him here, that he has a voice and that we have a voice. Many patients never leave the hospital. They don't get to have their children discharged. And it's not fair. Is it their fault? Would God have given people the means to have doctors, nurses, or hospitals if he thought that they were conflicted with the Catholic Church's doctrine on abortion? I understand saving an unborn baby's life. But let's stop. What message are we sending Halton, Ontario, Canada, and the world by implementing this motion? My daughter's 7 and asked me a few weeks ago if the school supports autism. I didn't know the answer, but I do now. No. No, you don't. Yesterday, my kids got to wear a hint of blue in support of autism. No monetary donations. How do you think this made children who sit on the spectrum feel? We will wear a bit of blue, but not donate a toonie to show you that your school, your community, and your church is in this with you. Because by supporting your need for autism research, we are threatening our own Catholicity. How should children with special needs feel that the school they attend doesn't support the needs of the children in their community? Furthermore, how should the parents of these children feel, whose taxes go to pay for these schools? We believe that the HCDSB no longer supports ALS, brain tumor, and autism research, Cancer Society, cerebral palsy, epilepsy, Special Olympics, MS, just to name a few. These are the causes that our children are moved to support because they're real and in front of them, not because they're on a list. Are we not teaching our kids to be more like Christ? We are aware of who Jesus kept as company. He did not only hang out with those who believed what he believed. In fact, he did the opposite. So why would we limit our kindness to that of people and what they believe and what we believe? What are we teaching our kids by doing that? People don't ask for autism, mental health, cancer, abuse, poverty, and so many more challenges we face in this world. How can we love our neighborhoods, or how can we love our neighbors without the school community? How can a school that teaches us to live a life of Jesus lived, but not walk the walk and talk the talk? It is reasonable to not fund abortion, but completely unreasonable not to fund autism research. God chooses to pass final judgment at the end of one's life, and not at the turn of each poor decision, making it always possible to be in a positive balance at the end of one's life. This is why we continue to strive to be better people each day. And don't be confused. The children we're raising are not the children we are raising are not the future of the church. Right now, they're the present of the church. Work with us parents to give these children the tools they need to grow Catholic Church from what it is today, not alienate them. What I am hoping to accomplish by being here today is to provide you with a different perspective and to ask you to overturn this resolution. We ask that you have faith in our schools, your staff, to make informed decisions based on the needs that reflect our own communities. After all, this is really about our children and teaching them to be engaged Catholics and encourage them to take their faith out into the world and make a difference. That is so much more meaningful than checking a box. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Ralph. Thank you for sharing your story with us. Any questions, trustees, for clarification? No? All right. Thank you. We do have another delegation, and then we have a couple more things to do. So in about 20 minutes, we will be able to respond to the delegations. So we ask for your patience. So number 5.4, gifted programming in a regular classroom versus accelerated programming at the Halton Catholic District School Board. Mr. Lorenko and Mrs. Lorenko. Welcome.
Good evening. Before I begin my delegation, I just want to share a tweet that I saw today that I think is very relevant to our story. It reads, "Every student should feel engaged and included and that they count." And that was a tweet from our Superintendent of Special Education. Sorry. He has to help me with all the technical things. This is my son, Joshua, grade 11 student here in Halton Catholic. Since he was identified gifted at the end of grade 6, it has been the responsibility of this board, as mandated by the ministry, to provide him with an individualized program specific to his needs. Despite a professional diagnosis costing us over $1,000, It took months to get anything in place. And then the programming consisted of Joshua completing multiple choice practice math contests in a corner on a computer by himself with no teacher oversight or even solutions provided. It became a game. He repeated the same contests over and over until he got perfect. Now please excuse me for stating the obvious, but I did have to explain to the special education resource teacher, the CERT, that this probably wasn't developing his math skills. The CERT was dumbfounded when we asked for this to stop. But how will he prepare for the math contest, she asked. When Joshua wrote the actual contest, the only teacher intervention was to provide the answers, as in, the answer to question 3 is C. When I suggested it might be helpful to have a teacher review the solutions, the response was, sorry, math is not my strength. After we raised a fuss, things improved a bit, but we had to raise a fuss. My first clue to the lack of programming in high school should have come when we started to plan for grade 8. The CERT told us that the grade 8 placement would be indirect support, as that is all that is offered in high school. I reminded her that grade 8 is not high school. I later learned from the board website that officially there are 3 placement options for high school, and that the information from the board website is up on the screen. In grade 8, we enrolled Joshua in a rigorous extracurricular math enrichment program at a cost of $3,000 for the academic year. $3,000 after-tax dollars out of our pockets because he wasn't getting what he needed from this board. It was then that Joshua's true math capabilities were finally unleashed. He started flying through grade 8 math, including all the enrichment that his teacher could find. I do believe she did her best with the resources available. It wasn't enough. She obtained special permission for Joshua to work out of the grade 9 textbook, but he flew through that too. It occurred to me that perhaps Joshua could earn the grade 9 credit while still in grade 8. So we began discussions with the high school. Somewhat reluctantly on their part, we came to realize. We were presented with nothing but challenges. Joshua would be sufficiently challenged in grade 9 by taking the AP math, even though AP is not a special education program. If he skipped a year of math, there would be no math for in grade 12, even though there are 3 grade 12 math courses which could be spread out between grades 11 and 12. I suggested instead he skip math in grade 9 and just start in grade 10. Again, there was the concern of a year without math, which can happen anyway to any student in a semester system. And if going straight to grade 10 math after a year without math was a challenge, well, that was the point. A challenge was exactly what we wanted. As you might have guessed, I didn't give up easily. So we met with the high school principal, who reviewed the work Joshua had been doing outside of school. He finally relented and proposed that Joshua could write the grade 9 AP math exam in June of his grade 8 year. If he achieved 85% or better, he would be exempted from grade 9 AP math. We accepted. Foolishly, we expected that Joshua might actually get some help towards achieving this goal. Nope. Again, as we sought assistance for our child, your student, we were challenged at every turn. His grade 8 teacher couldn't help because she wasn't qualified in high school math. The high school couldn't help because he wasn't their student until September. Funny, though, they collected the $65 activity fee in November, almost a year before he was their student. But I digress. 2 schools in the same school board, a couple of kilometers apart, were playing hot potato with my son. Nobody would help. Joshua's placement is regular classroom with resource support. Where were the resources? Where was the support? The elementary school principal had some suggestions, but they all fell through for one reason or another. One of the teachers didn't have time to help because it was soccer season, and he was busy organizing the school talent show. In the meantime, we started planning for grade 9. The CERT was again eager to change his placement. She said, we now have to change the placement for all grade 8s to indirect support in preparation for grade 9. She was surprised when I told her that the board officially offered 3 different placement options for high school, which again are up on your screen there. We repeatedly asked the high school CERT about Joshua's math program, and all we were told was if he doesn't get 85, he has to take the course. It was all or nothing. We were repeatedly told that AP would be sufficient on its own, even though he was already learning grade 9 math, even though AP is not a special education program.
Spoiler alert, I got 100 in both grade 9 and 10 AP math without studying for a single test, culminating or exam.
We asked for a key math assessment to help in the planning and programming. That was another hurdle. Key math is widely used throughout this board to assess struggling students to find their gaps. They couldn't comprehend assessing a student working ahead of grade level. Joshua maxed out the assessment in all but one category. In every other category, he was working above a grade 10 level. When we finally got help, it was to work on the one category in which he was only working at a grade 8 level in grade 8. The exercises generated by the assessment tool were so ridiculously remedial that the itinerant sent Joshua back to class after about 10 minutes. Nobody looked for a more appropriate level of exercises or for exercises to enrich the skills where he was more than 2 years ahead of his class. They sent him back to class. I continued to seek help and possible solutions to help Joshua prepare, including inquiring about online courses, but the response was always negative. I remember feeling complete desperation, sheer frustration, and completely abandoned by this board. I finally realized there was no support coming, and I was wasting precious time I could use to help my son prepare. So I buckled down. For the next 6 weeks, the laundry and takeout menus piled up, and I focused on grade 9 AP Math so that I could help my son, your student, prepare for his exam. Joshua achieved 79% on the exam. 79% with absolutely no professional instruction or intervention. I'm not a teacher, and it's been a long time since I took grade 9 math. And so we were told he had to take the course, and we didn't argue because that's what we had agreed. Even though he was only 6 points shy of the 85%, marks lost due to careless errors or not showing his work, not a lack of understanding the concepts in the course. In September, we asked what his math program would look like. Again, we were told he didn't get 85, so he has to take the course. And that was it. 6 points shy of an exemption put him back to square one. He was expected to just sit in class and take the course like every other student. They didn't understand he might be bored because it's AP, and there are other smart kids in the class, even though it's not a special education program, but it was everything he needed. It was like we had bought our son a Ferrari, and the school board told him he could only drive it in rush hour traffic. What a waste. We even had to fight to have his exam achievement recorded as an assessment on his individual education plan, a document whose purpose was to plan his education. I had to prove that ministry guidelines did allow for something other than professional assessments and diagnosis to be recorded here. After much wrangling, they agreed to develop an enrichment plan. We received a high-level, generalized description of enrichment for gifted students, not specific to Joshua. After more wrangling, we received a detailed list of textbook questions to be completed for the first 2 units, way too detailed. The ministry's definition of a special education plan is reflected on the current slide, but it doesn't resemble anything we've ever seen. But the detailed plan was better and included a commitment to continuously develop the plan for the rest of the course. That seemed reasonable and in keeping with the ministry's requirement of continuous assessment. Guess what happened after Unit 2? Nothing. No more plan. Joshua was again expected to just do the same work as the rest of the class. And this is why I tell you there is no program in high school. In reality, there is no other placement besides indirect support, unless parents are willing to constantly advocate and be vigilant, which is exhausting. In the end, the classroom teacher who had been absent all the previous meetings did challenge Joshua with material outside the curriculum, and we were grateful, but it took a year of fighting. We started these discussions with spec ed staff in grade 8. For grade 10, the IEP simply stated enrichment for every subject. We pretty much gave up for grade 11. When we ask about enrichment, we're told it's AP, so that's the enrichment, or we don't enrich in this class. Other teachers have recognized Joshua's capabilities and given him extensions here and there. But this is differentiation, which they are supposed to do anyway. And really, I don't blame the teachers. We're obviously asking for something their employer doesn't even expect, despite a ministry mandate and contrary information in the board's own spec ed plan and their website. I can't imagine what Joshua's high school career would have been like if he had had to settle for all academic courses. I truly believe it's the rigor and challenge of the AP courses and the exposure to like-minded peers that has kept him truly engaged throughout high school. And he still could have used more.
And so I ask you, based on our true story, which is unusual only in the amount of advocating and fighting that we are willing to do, does it sound to you like the board provides appropriate individualized programming for its gifted students in a regular classroom and particularly in high school?
If you are asking a question of us, we do not answer questions in a delegation. If you have a concern, and obviously you do have a concern, we're more than happy to pursue that and bring back information on that.
I'm leaving the question with you.
Are you finished?
Yeah.
Are you finished,
Yeah.
Joshua? Okay. Thank you very much. And thank you, Maria, as always. Trustees, do you have any questions for our delegates? No? All right. We'll respond to your delegation in about 10, 15 minutes or so, if you wouldn't mind having a seat. Thank you. approval of minutes, please. 6.1, minutes of April 17th, 2018, regular board meeting. Can I have a mover, please? Trustee Quinn, seconded by Trustee Michael. Any questions? All in favor? Thank you very much. 6.2, the minutes of the April 24th special board meeting. Can I have a mover, please? Trustee Intomasi, seconded by Trustee Trites. Any questions? All in favor? Thank you very much. Previous business, summary of outstanding items are on page 65. If you have any questions, just let me know. And then we will go back to the action items, back to the response to the delegates. This is 8.1, so I'll just read this information sheet for you. In accordance with policy I-06, delegation to the board, trustees may move a motion to 1. Make a decision on the presentation at the same meeting. 2. Refer the matter to a future meeting. 3. Request a staff report on the matter to be considered at a future meeting. Or 4. Receive the information, receive it as information. This evening we've had delegations regarding 2 separate subjects and therefore will respond to them separately. I open up the floor for any trustee motions regarding the delegation about the opposition to Resolution 61-18. Any trustee motions on the opposition to Resolution 61-18? Trustee Intomasi?
Madam Chair, through you, I'm just wondering whether we should defer that over to the amendment that's to come on 8.2.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Quinn, was yours along the same line?
No, through you, Madam Chair, could Trustee Intomasi explain that again, please?
Trustee Intomasi?
Yes, I believe we will be revisiting through an amendment to Resolution 61-18 in 8.2, so I just thought we could discuss it then.
Okay. Is that a motion or just a comment? Hang on. A comment or a motion?
I will make it a motion.
You want to put it into a motion?
Sure.
Okay. You have a point of order? Pardon me? The motion is exactly as Trustee Intomasi just mentioned. You'd like to hear it again? Would you mind, Arlene?
It would be to respond via item 8.2, amendment to Resolution 61-18.
Okay. Would be held in abeyance until you get to 8.2. All right, that's a mover. Can we have a seconder, please? Trustee Michael, any questions to that? Trustee Quinn?
Through you, Madam Chair, is that in line with our procedural bylaws? I believe we have to do one of 3 things, and this is not one of the 3 things.
She's making a decision on the presentation. She's moving it a little further down. So it's a decision on that presentation for now, until we get down to 8.2. It's not a big issue. We're just moving it to 8.2. Okay? Pardon me? No, the 2 different ones. This is for the first 2. It is not for the one on the pedagogy. All right, so we're doing the first 2, the opposition. Okay? Are we good? Okay, all in favor? All we're doing is moving it down. All in favor? All right, thank you. Now I open up, yes? You're opposed, sorry. I thought you were happy. Okay. All right. I open up the floor for any trustee motions regarding the delegation about gifted programming in a regular classroom versus accelerated programming at the Halton Catholic District School Board. Any trustee motions on that? Trustee Quinn.
I'll move that back till after we hear from the staff report from Superintendent Brendan Brown.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Trustee Ian Tomasi, you're going to second the motion?
Yes, I'll second it.
Thank you. Any questions to that motion? All right, all in favor? Thank you. So we are just, I'm sorry, Jane? You okay? Everybody's okay? Any opposed? So we're just moving that particular issue down until we hear the staff report. All right? Okay, moving right along. Thank you. And thank you very much to our delegates for speaking. All right, we're turning the page here. Oh, no. 8.2, Amendment to Resolution 61-18, upholding the sanctity of life through donations to charities and non-profits. Vice Chair Morai.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will read the amended portion of the motion. So this is to affect 6118, and it's to amend to add the language, be it further resolved that this resolution's third paragraph be implemented only after 1, the completion of community consultations, 2, the adoption of an amended fundraising policy by the board in response to this resolution, and in any event not earlier than the commencement of the 2018-2019 school year. Be it further resolved, the director advised schools and school councils that they may continue their fundraising activities in the same manner as they did prior to Resolution 6118 until an amended fundraising policy is approved by the board in response to this resolution.
Wish to speak to that? A seconder, please. Sorry. Trustee Intermass? Thank you. Go ahead and speak to it.
Sure. I have a few comments, just short. Firstly, I think that we should respect principled positions, and I very much respect my colleagues who hold such strong views on the sanctity of life issue. That said, I've taken the delegations that we've heard today in the past to heart, the messages from parents and students. I've taken the time to meet these parents and students and to actually listen to them. I think the greatest thing I've learned from this is the importance of communication over entrenchment, and this motion is very much my genuine attempt to fulfill my fiduciary duty to the board. And for those who felt ignored through this process, I'm sorry, and I hope this is just the first step we take to make this right. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Intermassey?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, I want to thank Trustee Marai for bringing this forward. I appreciate the amendment because I know it's a very difficult thing to do. I believe this would correct the legislative requirements and give our school community the recognition they've been requesting. I've heard from a lot of the parents, a lot of the students. The complaint is not the spirit of the motion, it's the process and the being excluded through the process. And they just want to have a voice once we do get all the feedback to be able to continue a dialogue with us so that we arrive at something that's, okay for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from trustees? Trustee Carabella?
I will be voting against this amendment. I've also received a lot of support and phone calls from parents who are grateful for this motion. I think what it's done is it's shone a light on things that we didn't know before we had the list. And now we do have a list and things are coming to the front. And once you know something is questionable on such a serious matter as life, we have to act on it. So that's what I'm doing. I also wonder that, if this would have shone light on an issue of fraud, would we continue to fundraise and work to promote that? So I think the life issue is a lot more serious, and I feel that we are getting consultation, we are hearing the delegations. At the same time, we've discovered something, and we have to act on that, and that's good Catholic teaching as well, that we don't continue cooperating if it's not a good. And the good here is the life of a child, the right to life in all stages from conception to natural death.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else would like to make a comment? Any trustees? Trustee Danko.
Thank you, Chair Rabenda. Yes, I would also like to concur with my fellow board member, Trustee Carabella, in the findings that we had since we obtained the first list ever of which charities our school board works with. I also want to thank my fellow board member, Mr. Marai. I believe he comes from a position of sincerity, and I've always respected his integrity. But I won't be supporting the amendment for the same reasons that Trustee Carabella cited. I think that part of our problem is we have been inconsistent in the decisions we've made around this motion. Some of us have been consistent, so I will just vote consistently with what I've done before.
Thank you. Any other trustees? No? Okay. Okay, then we'll take the vote. Ready to take the vote? Okay, Trustee Carabella?
So I'm opposed.
Opposed. Trustee Ingrid?
I'm in favor.
Trustee Ian Tomasi?
In favor.
Trustee Michael, sorry.
In favor.
Trustee Trice?
Opposed.
Thank you. Vice Chair Murray?
In favor.
Trustee Danko?
Opposed?
Trustee Rowe?
In favor.
Trustee Anna Maria?
In favor.
Trustee Quinn?
Opposed.
And I will be in favor. 5-4 in favor of the motion. Thank you. Thank you very much, and thank you to all who came, who perhaps will be leaving, but we're happy to have you stay if you'd like to stay. Trustee determination and distribution is next. 8.3, Trustee Michael.
I'm going to go forward with it because it's already here, but I don't know if it's holding its weight now. Whereas trustees voted on trustee determination and distribution at the March 6th board meeting under action item 8.7, and the conclusion of that vote, it was asked that we consult with stakeholders on what the board had decided in this matter. And whereas staff sent out a survey to stakeholders about the decision, which remained open until March 19th, and whereas the results of the survey were to be shared at the April 3rd board meeting under information item 10.4, since our April 3rd board meeting concluded before getting to the information item about the survey results, there's been no move to revisit these. And whereas a consultation demands discussion and input, a survey was conducted and nothing has been done with it. Be it resolved that the results of the survey be shared as soon as possible for discussion and action.
Thank you. So do we have a seconder? Trustee Rowe, thank you. Discussion on the issue? Trustee Michael?
I'm just going to echo what Trustee Marai said. Like, this is being upheld without any consultation, and it seems the wrong road to go down. I believe that communications is vital, and this needs to be spoken about.
Anyone else have a comment to say? I got a seconder, didn't I? Did I get a seconder? Yep, okay. I did, okay. Thank you. So would we then be looking at putting this on an agenda for an upcoming meeting? Is that what you're thinking, Trustee Michael, for discussion?
May 1st today is the day that people are signing up for, and
yes.
I don't know if it's moot point. No, I'm not sure.
Certainly, if we've taken a survey, we should discuss it. If for no other reason, then we take it into the future, obviously. So, any other comments, or can we say that would come up, Madam Director, at an upcoming meeting?
Through you, Madam Chair, we're in your hands if you wish us to put the survey results back on an agenda as information, and then at that point you could discuss it again.
Thank you. Trustee Quinn.
Madam Chair, I'd like to move that we put this to a vote of the entire Board of Trustees.
I'll get there. Any other comments on that? All right. We'll take the vote then. Trustee Carabella?
Opposed.
Trustee Ingrid?
In favor.
Trustee Intomasi?
In favor.
Trustee Michael?
In favor.
Trustee Trice?
Opposed.
Vice Chair Murray?
Opposed.
Trustee Danko?
Opposed?
Trustee Rowe?
In favor.
Trustee Anna Maria?
In favor.
Trustee Quinn?
Opposed.
And I'm in favor. 5-4, and it will not be coming back. All right, so now we're moving on to, we're going through our policy phase here. So this is 8.4, Policy 2-15, International Languages. Vice Chair Murray.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a recommendation from the Policy Committee. Resolve the Halton Catholic District School Board accept the recommendation of the Policy Committee in Policy 2-15 International Language Elementary Program be approved as amended.
Thank you. Trustee Quinn, you're seconding that? Thank you. Trustee Murray, did you want to say anything else to that? You okay? All right. Any questions? We've been through the policy process with this. Any questions at all on this? No? So we can take the vote? All right. Trustee Quinn?
In favor.
Trustee Anna-Maria?
In favor?
Trustee Rowe?
In favor.
Trustee Danko?
In favor?
Vice Chair Murray?
In favor.
Trustee Trice?
In favor.
Trustee Michael?
In favor.
Trustee Intomasi?
In favor.
Trustee Ingrid?
In favor.
Trustee Carabella?
In favor.
Thank you. 8.5, Policy 2-31, Risk Management First Aid, Vice Chair Murray.
Madam Chair, I'll move resolve the Halton Catholic District School Board accept the recommendation of the Policy Committee that Policy 2-31, Risk Management First Aid be approved as amended.
Thank you. Any questions to that? Any comments to that? All right, we'll take the vote. Trustee Carabella?
In favor.
Trustee Ingrid?
In favor?
Trustee Intomasi?
In favor.
Trustee Michael?
In favor.
Trustee Trice?
In favor.
Vice Chair Murray?
In favor.
Trustee Danko?
In favor?
Trustee Rowe?
In favor.
Trustee Anna-Maria?
In favor?
Trustee Quinn?
Favor.
Thank you. Now we are going to Safe Arrivals at School, 8.6, Policy 2-33. Vice Chair Murray.
Madam Chair, I'd like to move resolve the Halton Catholic District School Board accept the recommendation of the Policy Committee that Policy 2-33, Safe Arrival at School Program be approved as amended.
Thank you. A seconder, please. Trustee Rowe. Any questions? Comments? No? Ready for the vote. Trustee Quinn.
Favor.
Trustee Anna-Maria.
In favor?
Trustee Rowe.
In favor.
Trustee Danko.
In favor?
Vice Chair Murray.
In favor.
Trustee Trice.
In favor.
Trustee Michael.
In favor.
Trustee Intomasi.
In favor.
Trustee Ingrid.
In favor?
Trustee Carabella, sorry.
In favor.
Thank you. All right. 8.7, Policy 2-38, Education Research, Vice Chair Murray.
I should also probably mention that if you are looking at discussion for this, we do have the policy meeting videos also online, so if you want to hear a bit more discussion, there is some a thought to some of these amendments that we've made. Okay, so I'd like to move resolve the Halton Catholic District School Board accept the recommendation of the Policy Committee that Policy 2-38 Educational Research, Surveys, and Pilot Projects name be changed to Policy 2-38 Educational Research and be approved as amended.
Seconder, please. Trustee Quinn, any questions, comments? Trustee Carabella?
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. Through reviewing this, I didn't notice any about consent for some of the surveys, and I wondered that research that requires the consent or requires children participation should be sent to parents for consent, active consent. Is it in
Through you, Madam Chair, the consent information is on the procedure document.
Oh, okay. It's on the procedure.
And do you think it would be necessary to put it on the policy as well?
I don't have any problem putting it on the policy. Is there any reason why it can't go on the policy?
Through you, Madam Chair, if I'm remembering the policy committee meeting correctly, there was discussion about adding it to the policy, but then you decided as a group that it was fine just being on the procedure document.
Okay, do we have a strong feeling one way or the other here, trustees? Trustee Rowe?
I just believe there's a higher authority that mandates this permission, so I think it's already mandated at the legislature.
Thank you. Trustee Quinn, did you have something?
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair. I don't recall the conversation exactly the same way as our research department, so I think I'd like to hold off and bring this back to policy for further discussion about bringing the potential for bringing the policy up to date with some amendments.
Do you want to make that an amendment then?
Yes, please. I'd like to move that we refer this back to policy for further discussion.
Okay, thank you. Seconded by Vice Chair Murray. All in favor? All right, thank you. That's going back. The next one is 8.8, Policy 2-43, Voluntary Confidential Self-Identification of First Nation, Métis, and Inuit Students. Vice Chair Murray.
I would like to move resolve the Halton Catholic District School Board accept the recommendation of the Policy Committee that Policy 2-43, Voluntary Confidential Self-Identification of First Nation, Métis, and Inuit Students be approved as amended.
Thank you. A seconder for that, Trustee Rowe. Any questions for that, trustees? No? All right. Can we vote then, please? Trustee Carabella?
In favor.
Thank you. Trustee Ingrid?
In favor.
Trustee Intomasi?
In favor?
Trustee Michael?
In favor.
Trustee Trites?
In favor.
Thank you. Vice Chair Murray?
In favor.
Trustee Danko?
In favor.
Trustee Rowe?
In favor?
Trustee Anna Maria?
In favor.
Trustee Quinn?
In favor.
Thank you very much. 8.9, request for out-of-Canada travel. Superintendent Pinelli?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The purpose of this report is to share information about Halton Catholic District School Board's requested attendance at the upcoming trade missions. And there are 2 trade missions organized, one by the Ontario Association of School Districts International, that is being held in Madrid and Moscow in November, and the Canadian Association of Public Schools International, CAPSI, that it will be attending Milan and Mexico City. We are, as a Catholic, Halton Catholic District School Board, is in fact a member of both these nonprofit associations, and that we are active along with many other boards. And in fact, this is part of our strategy as we've worked through this year. I don't need to remind the board that international education continues to provide a tremendous benefit to our board on many levels, and I've prepared many reports over the subsequent, the last several months that we never really got to really get into, but we in fact have been recruiting students from around the world and continue to do that because we do not want to singly put all our eggs, so to speak, in one basket in one region. So this year, Halton Catholic has seen a real shift in the number of international students that are attending our system. Our recent recruitment efforts in Europe has allowed us to partner with many diverse agencies and countries that we would never have had that opportunity if we were not present in those trade missions. Trade missions are very different than some of the other conferences that we've attended in the past because trade missions are organized by the Canadian embassies along with business-minded, and the agencies and the companies that do attend these agencies have already been pre-screened. So they are much more successful and, in fact, very interested in partnering with us as a board. This will provide value to our students and obviously to our school communities, and the request is in alignment with our international education strategy to continue to recruit students and to continue to grow our program. So I'm putting forth the following recommendation this evening and need permission in order for us to continue to attend these. So be it resolved that the Halton Catholic District School Board approve the request for travel outside Canada by one senior staff member to attend the 2 different trade missions as outlined in the resolution. And
Thank
again,
you.
as always, it is my pleasure to represent the board.
Thank you. Vice Chair Murray? You're seconding it? No, you're moving. No, it's okay. You're moving it. My mistake. Trustee Intomasi, you're seconding?
Yes, please.
Any questions, comments? Trustee Quinn.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, to the superintendent, is it a requirement that we commit to Mexico City a full 13 months before, or can we wait for some results from our November and February trips before committing to Mexico?
We have to commit because the price is based on commitment, and we've submitted our name that we are interested. They know that at this point I need board approval, and if in fact there is no board approval, it will go to another board. There's a wait list. So if we don't commit, then we lose our spot.
Trustee Danko?
Chair Rabenda, do we have a rough estimate of the cost of attending these trips?
Superintendent Pinelli?
Yes, we do. The CAPSIs, the 2 of them, it's about $9,000 for registration and to be part of it, and the Ontario one is about $4,500.
Okay. Any other questions? Trustee Carabella, then Trustee Intomasi.
And how many students are you expecting to attract through that?
when you go to these trade fairs, you are meeting with companies and agencies, and is the hope that you will be able to, at least if you look at, the costs, even if you generate one student, you will have covered the cost.
Trustee Intomasi?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, this is a curiosity question because maybe we've talked about it before, I don't recall. Do we have students that are registered in IB or AP? Do we have identified students when they come over? I'm just curious if we have a breakdown on any of that.
Talking about international students, I do have a breakdown of our current students when we get to that report. It's interesting. Up to this point, remember our commitment to International Baccalaureate is that we do open our doors to any international students from another IB recognized school. And this year we have in fact had 4 students approach us from overseas wanting to be admitted. They will have to go through the same process for admission as any of our other students.
Just to go back to the spec ed piece, once we have international students, is there a component that have IEPs, or are these students just regular mainstream students?
The international students that we are accepting are mainstream. And we do have a criteria, academic criteria, as well in terms of every single student is screened through my office, through myself, and we do have, if you go onto our website, the agents and the companies fully are aware, the parents, in terms of the academic rigor and expectations before they even apply.
Thank you. Any other questions for Superintendent Pinelli? All right, then we'll take the vote. Trustee Quinn?
In favor.
Trustee Anna Maria?
In favor.
Trustee Rowe?
In favor.
Trustee Danko?
In favor.
Vice Chair Marai?
In favor.
Trustee Trites?
In favor.
Trustee Michael?
In favor.
Trustee Intomasi?
In favor.
Trustee Ingrid?
In favor.
Trustee Carabella?
In favor.
Thank you very much. Moving on to 8.10, school name selection, Milton number 8, Catholic Elementary School Support Action. Superintendent Cipriano.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you, I present this action report regarding the naming of the Milton number 8 Ford Catholic Elementary School. Just a reminder, I presented a report on April 17th with 2 names, a preferred name and a secondary name to Bishop Crosby. Bishop Crosby responded to our Director of Education, Paula Dawson, that he is hoping and requesting that the alternate name be selected as the name for the Milton number 8 Ford Catholic Elementary School, that name being St. Scholastica. His letter is attached to the report. Essentially, his reasoning behind the request to go with the alternate name and not the preferred name is, number one, the feast day for St. Scholastica is in February rather than July for St. Maria Goretti. That would enable the school and the students to celebrate the feast day during school days. He also referenced the voting. The voting wasn't a large number of parents that voted for the names in total, only 32 votes, and St. Maria Goretti received 11 of those 32 votes. St. Scholastica received 10 of those votes, so the voting was very close. And then finally, recognizing that St. Scholastica is the twin sister of St. Benedict, and that's where the students will be coming from to the new school from St. Benedict, and he believed there's great opportunities for synergy between the schools and a great story and a great history for our school board to know that the 2 schools that are close by geographically were saints and were brother and sister twins in their life. So I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Any questions, Superintendent? I'm sorry, for Superintendent. Never mind. Arlene.
Just a comment, Madam Chair. I'm just very pleased that the bishop took the time to go through it. He doesn't usually ask for anything, so I'm certainly going to be in support of his request.
Anyone else have a comment or a question? Yep. Mover, please. Superintendent, I'm sorry, why am I going that way? I don't know. I just see you as a superintendent tonight. Trustee Intomasi, seconded by Trustee Rowe. Any further comments on it? Okay. All right, we'll do the vote. Trustee Carabella.
In favor.
Thank you. Trustee Ingrid.
In favor.
Trustee Intomasi.
In favor.
Trustee Michael.
In favor.
Trustee Trites.
In favor.
Vice Chair Murray?
In favor.
Trustee Danko?
In favor.
Trustee Rowe?
In favor.
Trustee Anna Maria?
In favor?
Trustee Quinn?
Abstain from this vote, please.
Sorry? Abstain, okay. Superintendent Cipriano, you will let our bishop know and also let the principal know for the
I'd be
community?
happy to now refer to St. Scholastica going forward rather than
Yeah.
Milton number 8, and I will be happy to share that information and news with the community, the principal, and Bishop Crosby. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're going to staff reports now, and we're just going to go to 9.2 first because we have guests here who are staying to hear our comments on 9.2. So it's a small juggle, and we'll go to 9.2, which is transportation to advanced placement and or international baccalaureate programs for gifted students in the Halton Catholic District School Board secondary schools. We have Dr. Brown, Superintendent Nagoy, Superintendent Pinelli. You're all on. Who's taking it?
Hi.
You are. Okay.
So I know the trustees have read the report, so to summarize, the delegation suggests that the needs of gifted students are not currently being met, being served in our secondary schools, and the way to rectify this situation is to provide gifted students with exclusive transportation to advanced placement programs in order to rectify a programming deficit. So the report provides trustees with information along with the survey itself that was sent in March, notwithstanding the individual delegation this evening. The report would not suggest that there is a deficit for our students. Our students themselves report that the majority are quite satisfied with their existing programs, and in fact, gifted students in the regular academic stream report the highest levels of satisfaction. This speaks to our staff and our ability to program and meet individual student needs in any of our secondary programs, be it regular stream, AP, or IB. AP and IB were not introduced in our board as special education programs, and the programs themselves are intended to be optional and open to any interested student. Any student on our board who wishes to enroll can do so. Transportation challenges that face families who live outside of our 3 catchment areas for AP or the SCA catchment area for IB are the same for any family and are not necessarily compounded by a gifted identification. The recommendation of staff would be to not provide transportation to some students and not others in the same program based on a gifted identification. It's a further recommendation of staff that any drastic changes to transportation for students might be premature in the light of the provincial New Vision for Student Transportation in Ontario report that is being released in the fall of 2018. A link to this discussion paper and the Ministry's consultation process for the reconsideration of transportation for students was provided in the report. Trustees requested transportation costs for AP and IB programs, and these are provided in the report, both for gifted students only as well as for all students in consultation with HSCS. Trustees also requested costs involved in expanding AP and IB programs in our system. So costs for these programs from startup to ongoing are also provided in this report. We will continue to actively consider possible expansion opportunities for AB and IP. Such considerations are done in collaboration with the governing bodies of each program. We just opened, for example, a new Oakville AP location at Holy Trinity this year, and we look forward to the audit of our IB program, which may open opportunities for a second location moving forward as well. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have, and certainly Superintendent Nagoy or Pinelli could speak to any questions you have about transportation costs specifically or the optional programs themselves.
Thank you. Any questions for Dr. Brown? Trustee Carabella.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. So I know when I asked for the report, I was wondering about the actual number of just only the gifted students that would be outside a catchment area to have transportation, not all.
We did we provided the information for you both for gifted as well as for all students, recognizing that it's good for trustees to have as much information as possible, and knowing that there would be pressure, certainly with any specific look at gifted students, there would be pressure from the entire community, so good for you to have all the information.
Thank you. So another idea that I was wondering if it's possible to do to just could they join an existing bus route close by and have a priority on the courtesy seat? Not that it's guaranteed, but that it could be a priority, or is this a possibility that could help them get there?
Any student would be open to the same courtesy seat policy as with the board. If there's access to existing bus routes and there is opportunity on buses, that's something that can be arranged with the principal of the school.
Is that arranged prior to the year, or as it starts? That's all done?
It's usually requested before the school year starts. Generally speaking, there's a wait time of about 2 weeks to make sure that you have an accurate understanding of who's on the bus and how many. Sometimes it can happen quicker than that. Like, we do have a pretty good idea of what numbers are early as possible, but within the first couple of weeks of the school year.
If no one else has, I did want to... Okay. Just with regards to the transportation report, is there a way that we can bring this back once we get the transportation report to put it on the future business to look at?
Certainly, it would be the will of the board to do so at any time, and it probably would be most prudent to do so when we had a vision from the ministry as to what their plans are for transportation moving forward.
Okay. Anyone else have questions on this matter? No? Okay. Do we have any idea as to when in the fall? The fall is 4 months. When in the fall?
So I answer this as somebody who's been working, in education with the ministry for a long time. I would be loath to pin them down to a date. When they say the fall, they hit the fall, but I mean, I'll hold them to the fall. How's that, as opposed to saying by October 31st? But knowing the ministry, they're not usually on the early end of reporting, that you can be at any point.
Much, thank you. All right, no other questions from trustees? All right. So we'll go to 9.1, 2018 Long-Term Capital Plan. Oh, the delegation. Yes, I forgot about the delegation. All right, so we need a motion to respond to the delegation, and that motion can be, after you've heard the presentation on the transportation, you can make a decision on the presentation at the same meeting, refer the matter to a future meeting, request a staff report on the matter, which we now have, to be considered at a future meeting, which would be the next meeting around would be an action meeting for that particular report, or receive it as information. So I have to ask the trustees, does anyone want to make a motion in this regard? Trustee Quinn?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. I don't think that the report from Dr. Brown specifically answers the queries and the concerns of the delegate, but I'd like to move that we do receive it as information, and I look forward to hearing more from the delegate and any other parents who have concerns about their individual students' special education plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we have a seconder for Trustee Quinn? Receive as information pending more queries from ratepayers, stakeholders. Trustee Danko, you have a seconder? Any questions to the motion? All right, take the vote. Trustee Quinn?
Favor.
Thank you. Trustee Anna Maria?
In favor.
Trustee Danko?
Favor.
Vice Chair Murray?
Favor.
Trustee Trites?
Favor.
Trustee Michael?
Favor.
Trustee Intomasi?
In favor.
Trustee Ingrid?
Opposed.
Trustee Carabella?
In favor.
Thank you. So that's in favor. Thank you. All right. Moving right along, we are now at 9.1 once again. 2018 Long-Term Capital Plan, Superintendent Ngoy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Before you tonight is the draft long-term capital plan for 2018. A printed copy has been provided to trustees for your review and information. And staff will present an overview of the process and how to review and navigate the document. I do recognize it is lengthy. On May 7th, staff will be hosting a dual-purpose meeting. On one hand, it will be the annual facility accommodation presentation as required by our policy and procedure on community planning and facility partnership. And on the other hand, it will be the draft 2018 long-term capital plan presentation. And I'll now pass it on to Fred and Dylan to walk you through the package tonight. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Welcome, Fred and Dylan.
Good evening, Madam Chair, and thank you for having us. Just one moment. Oh. As Superintendent Ngoy has indicated, we are here tonight to present to you the draft long-term capital plan. Perfect. All right, and the main focus for this is to present to you the initial document that staff has been working with since the beginning of the year, approximately October, run you through some of the milestones that we have gone through since the beginning stages of this. We want to explain to you a few things tonight. We want to go over again what a long-term capital plan is. We haven't seen one in about 5 years updated. However, we have been doing a lot of work related to the long-term capital plan. So now we've tied it all together, and now we're going to make this as part of our annual process. The other thing we want to do as well is go through some of the 2013 long-term capital plan stats and update as to how the board has been doing in terms of meeting some of those requirements over time. Some of the projects have been approved. Afterwards, we'll go through the 2018 long-term capital plan, some of the milestones and things that staff has been doing, the future milestones as to what we can expect next from here till the end of the year. And the other thing we want to do as well, now that we've provided the draft version, we want to give some time with the document. That said, we want to indicate a little bit how the document has been designed, what the materials are within it, and what our intention was, so then you can take some time and review the specific areas that relate to you, and we're going to come back to board to receive comments at a later time. Afterwards, we'll take some questions, and we'll go through some of the next steps as to what we foresee in the coming weeks. So as you may already know, a long-term capital plan is a planning document, but also a facility document that looks at a 15-year horizon. It's very comparable in many ways to the education development charges reports that we do also on a 5-year horizon, and have a lot of the similar components to them. So we've seen a little bit of that come through during this year. So what some of the components of the long-term capital plan include are things that address facility utilization. Either there's an overutilization, underutilization, and the need to address accommodation issues in a variety of ways. So that can be in the form of school boundary reviews. It can be in the form of school additions and renovations to meet program needs or just meet the current standards of 21st century learning. It can be accommodation reviews or program reviews and rejigging boundaries here and there. And it could also be, as we've seen, as we are a very fast-growing region, new school projects. That's what we've been seeing over the past few years. Another thing that's a little bit newer in the whole long-term capital process is the identification of potential partnership opportunities with our stakeholders, not only the ones that we share jurisdiction with, but also those as community members or other agencies that want to partner with us and utilize some of our surplus or potentially new space. Last but not least, this is also an opportunity for us to look in advance to see what future capital projects we have lined up, and also some potential consolidation projects as well. So we can line up the board's future capital planning and prioritize what we need to meet accommodation issues. So, as I mentioned, the last time we did the long-term capital plan was back in 2013, and it was approved in principle in June of that year. The Ministry of Education recommends that a board should have a long-term capital plan updated at the very least every 5 years. We're looking to enhance that a little bit more and keep it more up to date, but we'll get that in a second. So right now, it's about to come to term this June of 2018, much like in the same timeline that we've seen our EDC come to term, so they're both pretty well aligned. So now we've undertaken the project to renew this plan. Well then, I guess our images are too high res. The schools are just that pretty. So I will so just to give you a little bit of a brief update, since we've done the 2013 long-term capital plan, we can provide a printed version or a digital version of this presentation after the fact. We've had numerous projects. I'll stick to the capital projects for now and not go through all the boundary reviews, but we had an FDK addition to St. Francis of Assisi. We had Guardian Angel, St. Anthony of Padua. We had the opening of Queen of Heaven, St. Benedict, St. Gregory the Great, the addition to Holy Rosary Catholic Elementary School. The new Milton 8 is underway and it's coming. Oakville South Central, a consolidation project in South Oakville. The St. Mark addition as well as childcare. The St. Peter childcare, the Bishop Redding addition, and the Oakville Northeast consolidation addition and childcare. So these are some of the major capital projects that we've achieved and aligned with our 2013 long-term capital plan that were, I guess, milestones, let's call them, or project recommendations that were identified at that time that we've achieved. Now, we haven't had the chance to achieve all of them, again, because we have to go through ministry funding requirements, It's not always within our control to get some of these projects off the ground and implemented, but I would say that staff, as well as the Board of Trustees, have endeavored to do quite a bit of the work that was required and recommended in terms of accommodation reviews and things of that nature. So a lot of this, if we could implement it, and we did receive the funding, we achieved quite a bit since the last iteration of the plan. Something that's a little bit newer that started and is a little bit of the inception of this community planning facility partnership, or going out to stakeholders, was the ministry's new guidelines. It was Pupil Accommodation Review Guideline number 3, as well as the first iteration of the community planning partnership guidelines, which we've called Community Planning Facility Partnership. Essentially what we have to do is we go to the public, we have one meeting, we tell them what our future outlook and future projects are, any partnership opportunities, and we identify the future capital projects that we have to see if there's anybody that would be willing to partner with us. So this has been something we've been doing for the past 3 years, and it's very much aligned with what we seek to do now and to go forward with a long-term capital plan. We're going through the same milestones, we're going through the same consultation. Now it's bringing it together as a complete package that we can bring back to the Board of Trustees to give you that outlook and that consistent document over time to review and see where staff's direction is going. So as I mentioned previously, we started this process back in October 2017, and there's been a lot of work that's gone into this project. So I really need to give special thanks to the Planning Services Department, the colleagues that we have. So I have here tonight our Planning Officer, Dylan Guinness-Sequeira, which has been crucial in this work and bringing it together. We also have our GIS Planning Officer, Rudy Sarek, which isn't here tonight, Erica Emery. Karen Jones has also assisted greatly, and we have a great deal of help from our Facility Management Services Department as well, and the team. So tonight we present to you the draft long-term capital plan, which is the culmination of a lot of this work. We're not done yet, but we're getting there. So just to give you a quick update, like I was saying, we do a lot of this on year to year. It's just a matter of bringing it all together in a complete package. So in October, we presented that this was one of the board's, or one of the staff's major projects in planning, this and the EDC renewal, so we've aligned both of them together and make sure they're reconciled to one another as well. We've again done the 4-year ministry enrollment projections, which were kind of the kicking point of kickstarting this process. Those projections were later refined as we gathered more and more development information, and those projections were then posted on the board's school planning website, which presented this information to the public. It's on our board website too, just to inform our constituency what the enrollment numbers look like. Since then, we presented the annual facility accommodation report to the Board of Trustees in a package. Unfortunately, we didn't have the opportunity to present it that night, but it was a part of the package. Very similar to what we've done in the past 2 years as well. And now, what we seek to do after tonight's meeting is to have our annual meeting and present not only the annual facility accommodation plan to our stakeholders, but we also want to get some outreach and present the contents of the long-term capital plan to the public. So we'll be hosting that at Corpus Christi this Monday. We hope to gather some feedback. That said, the next step afterwards is we'd like to come back on May 15th after you've had some time to review the capital plan, hear any potential delegates on the matter, and also hear from anything or any comments that you've had in reading the document, or any ideas, suggestions, or questions. So we'll have another discussion. Thereafter, we're going to come back on June 5th to bring this forward in a final format and seek the approval in principle from the Board of Trustees. And we'll get into that in a little bit more details as to what that approval means. So, as Superintendent Nagoya pointed out, we just want to show you some of the components that were within the report and highlight some key areas and how they associate within this presentation to the sections that are found therein. So we're going to be looking at the guiding principles that the staff has used in bringing forward some of these recommendations, how we're looking at the overall picture of the board on a capital and accommodation standpoint. We're going to do a brief overview on the methodology. We're going to look at what the components are within the regional overview. We're going to look at what you can find about an overview of the schools that we have at the board. We're going to look at how to read the elementary review areas and secondary review areas. So this is the part that really coincides with our education development charges bylaw and background study. And then, then there's the summary at the end. So in terms of our principles, again, this is located on section 1.2 of your long-term capital plan. To go through them briefly, a lot of it is about the efficiency and sizes of classrooms. We want to make sure that what we're doing ensures that the school is viable on its own. We want to make sure that all our learners have access to a variety of high-quality school programming, equity of opportunity to getting to these schools, and having like the best possible facilities we can offer. We want to make sure that students are best accommodated within permanent classrooms where feasible, understanding the maximum, like the peak yields. We also need to acknowledge the fact that portables are a reality in the fast-growing region, so we have to balance that with keeping them in bricks and mortar. We want to ensure some stability in our neighborhoods and not be doing boundary reviews every year. So we also have to have that in mind where we're trying to create that stable neighborhood fabric and we're not changing things. And if we are, to advise and inform the community of what is to come, like we're seeing in Milton 8. We're looking at active modes of transportation. We're looking at addressing facility renewal needs. We're looking at these potential community hubs because that is a provincial direction right now, and it's to the benefits of our constituency to have these additional services in the schools where there are synergies and where it meets where it aligns with the board and what is best for the community as well. And it's also about working with our partners to find the best possible co-build opportunities that we can. In terms of projections, again, I'm not going to go through this in detail, but there's the 4 big pillars that we use in doing projections. We look at what we have in our schools today. We look at the historic the historic birth rates to see how our JKs are going to line up. Are we seeing trends increase, decrease? So that is a new enhancement that we put forward in the last couple of years, and it's definitely helped us. We look at where the kids go year over year from our existing community, so that's progression factors and rules. What ratios do we keep? What ratios do we lose? What ratios go to other schools for programs inside the board? And again, the big factor is always development. There's a lot of development going on in the region of Halton, and that certainly plays a part in how our schools are going to be performing over the long term. So at this point, I'll pass it over to Dylan.
Just on that last slide, through you, Madam Chair. The apartment buildings are low yield, but they're not low yield per square foot in the community. They're low yield based on units. Is that right? So when I'm thinking about the EDCs and the different prices, they're low yield by their footprint, not by comparison to another equal amount of space used.
No, to your point, Madam Chair, if I understand the point correctly, is it's not based on a GFA, so a higher density would look more towards an apartment unit. In an apartment unit where, let's say I have 300, or let's just keep round numbers, 100 units, I may see 5 students be generated out of that sort of housing within the Halton region. Again, that's looking back at historics. In the medium density, so those are like townhouses and semis, stack towns. You know what, like in that, you see a blended one. So you can have a stack town which has a smaller GFA, and you can have a full townhouse which could be as big as some regular-sized homes, and they'll have very comparable yields. It's really about the number of bedrooms that really plays a part in this, not necessarily the GFA. And then again, the high yield is certainly your single-family homes. That's your more traditional, higher yielding form of development. However, as I said, that's basing it on past trends. So what we're seeing now is that as housing prices are starting to increase dramatically, it's becoming more and more difficult for younger families to break into the market. So we're starting to see that yields are starting to shift more and more. Regardless of that, what we do know is that, you start in a low-yielding environment, and eventually you build up to the medium and higher, and that's, if you move into an apartment, then you might progress into that first, let's say, single-family home over time. But because you're establishing, you're building that equity, you eventually get to that point where you're producing kids, or you stay there because, you know what, at the end of the day, affordability is becoming a factor. When we're looking at our, higher density environments like Mississauga, Toronto, there's that shift that's happening where I think the yields it may flatten over time.
So remind me what GFA stands for?
Gross floor area.
Right. So regardless of the gross floor area, I want to talk about the entire size of the development. If a single-family 4,000 square foot home in Milton, 10 of them might take up the same amount of development space as an apartment building with 10 floors. So do we look at yield in the same way? Because I think that 10-story condo could have more children than the 5 or 10 houses that are built. Do we look at it that way, based on square footage of the land use?
Through Madam Chair, no, but what I can tell you, the way that it's right now, I would say that whatever amount that you're taking for an apartment dwelling, and the amount of students that are being generated out of that, you're gonna get a lot more out of a single-family home in that same plot of land, even though you've got less units. So it's more of a factor of space within that. One of the troubles with higher density developments is that, albeit that you have a high number of them, there's a range of types. So you can have, a high number of bachelors, a high number of one-bedrooms, and then your number of two-bedroom and three-bedrooms are far lesser. So by the time you look at it as an entirety, the ones that could generate, I would say that the more likely to generate students, there's fewer of them. So albeit they've taken up less spot, it's just a lot of it's just starter housing for kids or for people to eventually build up to that next level of housing. Or after. But even then, we're seeing, it's sometimes cheaper to stay in place. Things are changing. It's very dynamic, we'll say. Yeah. Hope that answers your question. Dylan now.
So for the next sections, I'll refer to the page numbers as well, because there's a lot of graphs and tables. So the first section is the regional overview and enrollment trends. So the purpose of this section is it provides an overview of the region's population by municipality and share of the region's population from the 2006 to 2011 to 2016 census. It outlines the board's enrollment trends from 2006 to 2016. The number of schools that we've built since then, since 2006, to accommodate this increase in student population. We also provide a visual, which you've seen before. It shows the enrollment by panel. So we show the historic enrollment for the past 5 years, and then the projected for the next 15 years. The dark gray line is the total functional building capacity of the board. So that's the bricks and mortar capacity. And then above that is the total site capacity. So that's the sum of the bricks and mortar capacity plus the capacity derived from the maximum number of portables possible on a site based on the current condition. Within this section, we also provide a table. We break it down by elementary and secondary as well. We provide the facility condition index, which is an index that is based off of the renewal needs versus the facility asset value. The total FBC, portable capacity, site capacity, and then we provide the enrollment projections for the next 15 years, as well as the 15-year change in enrollment. So that would be the enrollment from 2017 versus 2032. Just to note, we do have a section highlighted in bold red for secondary total. So the reason that it's highlighted in bold red is because that's where the total enrollment exceeds the site capacity of the secondary panel. So in those cases, we would need additions or new schools to accommodate those students. In these pages, we also have a how to read guide for the table and the graphs. As Fred mentioned, we do track development to ensure that we can project the number of students from these new developments. This is just a graphic showing the new development in the Lumen Christie area. And then within section 2.2, we also provide maps of where we have greenfield development as well as development from intensification. So greenfield development is where we see a high number of single-family homes, and we typically see a high number of students coming from these developments. Whereas growth areas, these would be within the existing urban area. An example would be building a condo in a vacant parking lot in downtown Burlington. These would be townhomes and apartments, and we have typically seen a lower yield from these developments, but we do continue to track these to see if housing choice changes based on market conditions. For Burlington, the mobility hubs outlined, they are still proposed in the new OP. whereas the growth areas in Oakville, those are already within their current official plan. Oh, guys, that was... No? Okay. So this would be... it seems like it's too high res for this. So in this slide, what we show is the development within Milton and Halton Hills. If you want to refer to it in your book, it's page 22. 118 in the package. Yes, 118 in the package.
We have a nice color copy for you. I'll look further.
So within Milton and Halton Hills, the development is entirely new greenfield development. So these will be single-family homes, or it will be mostly single-family homes. Section 3.1, what we do is we provide a list of programs that planning services projects. There are certain ones we don't project. For example, advanced placement. While we don't project that, we do keep an eye on that because we do see a lot of students coming into the program from other schools within the HCDSP system as well as outside of our system.
Just a quick addition on that too. Those color-coordinated, let's call them widgets for lack of a better term, you'll see them in the tables as well when we're identifying individual schools, so you can see what kind of programs are housed within them. It's a way of wayfinding within the document as well.
Jumping on to section 3.2. So here we provide the regular track family of schools as well as program feeders. So this is an example of the program feeders for the early French immersion option. An example would be St. Anthony of Padua in the middle. So that would go into St. Benedict for grade 1 FI, and students have the option of choosing extended French immersion in grade 9 at Bishop Redding. We also identify where we have grandfathering currently in place. So the example here is St. Peter, where we already have an existing French immersion program. You can't enter that program from SK currently, but students within St. Peter's, they would continue on to Bishop Redding for grade 9. In section 3.3, we identify admission to grade 9 by municipality. So these graphs are for the 2016 grade 8 student population to the 2017 grade 9 population. So for projections, what we do is we adjust the projection to account for these external admissions by school based on a 3-year trend. For example, we have a high number of internal admissions for grade 9 in our Burlington schools versus 44% in Milton that come from the public board.
When we're building new high schools, proposing new high schools, and we have a number of feeder students, how do we project the amount of students for a high school if we're getting upwards of 40% coming from another board? Are we able to project what that's going to be in a way with the declining, I guess, presumably declining number of Catholics in Ontario?
Through Madam Chair, that's a good question. When we're, and it's a difficult one, it's one of the ones where we just use the law of averages and we review that area and we assume that, listen, if we're going to, like in Milton particularly, when we're looking at the construction of a new school, we'll say, well, if we're already getting a very high proportion of other board admissions, we should have that into consideration. We do often taper it down because we don't want to rely on something that we're not entirely convinced that will materialize. So again, you look at averages, but sometimes you want to be a little bit more conservative. We do highly rely on our internal admissions for the majority of it, with having regard to what historics have said about other boards feeding.
Through you, Madam Chair, but we will build high schools based on potential of the feeder schools not fulfilling the I guess the requirements of having a high school, but on cross-board transfers from other feeder schools.
Through Madam Chair, that's correct, yes. So we're making sure that we're not underbuilding on these scenarios to ensure that when we do build, we're not over, we're not under, we're at a comfortable level, and we provide ourselves flexibility that if we were to need an addition, we could do so.
for that, on page 32, we show the grade 8 retention. So those would be the students, we don't have a graphic here in this presentation. That would be the number of grade 8 students that attend a Catholic secondary school. And we do identify where we see notable trends. For example, St. Vincent, where only 24% of the grade 8 class attends a Catholic secondary school. The next section, section 3.4, is we describe what facility condition index is and renewal needs. So facility condition index, or FCI, is the 5-year of renewal needs divided by the asset replacement value. So the graph here, it shows the FCI of all the schools in the board. And the purpose of FCI in long-term capital planning is that it helps to identify where renewal projects are required, where we would need rebuilds or additions or maybe even school consolidations. So for the next section, we're going to talk about, we'll give you an example of a review area and how the information is presented within our report. So for this, I'll use CEB3, which is page 51 of your report. So the first part of the review area, actually before I start, a review area is a geographic unit of analysis that that's used to analyze larger community trends impacting schools at a smaller scale than the municipality. So for elementary schools, we determine these boundaries by looking at the general age of housing stock, unit composition, and demographic trends. And for secondary school, it's largely based off of the family of schools, just for the ease of analysis. And these review areas do match our 2018 EDC bylaw review areas. So within this section, we outline the area enrollment trends. These will be area totals, as well as any notable trends by school, school programming information and trends, as well as summary of development. Below that, we provide a review area map. This shows the boundary of the review area, individual school boundaries, as well as the study areas and any other geographic features. Next page, we provide the recommendations from the 2013 LTAP and how we address those. So these will be renewal needs, additions, school consolidation and closures, school boundary reviews, and program reviews. This is just a graphic similar to the regional overview section. However, these are broken down by school. So it's a great visual because where we have the total enrollment below the FBC line, it indicates that we have surplus pupil places, and where enrollment is above the total site capacity line, it indicates we need additions or new schools. So here we outline the enrollment projections, historic and projected, for the next 15 years by school. It indicates the FCI of the school as well as the programming available at the school. And then below that, we show the major residential developments that will impact schools in this area. The next page, the report outlines some basic school information, such as opening year, site size, facility condition index, when the facility was last assessed, capacity information, school programs and feeders, as well as any community uses. An example would be at St. Mark, where we show the number of childcare spaces and the other uses, such as the early on center for expected for January 2019. The following page, we outline the renewal timeline, and that's based off of the long-term facility renewal strategy, as well as projects for the 2018 school year. We identify in the next section schools that meet the community planning and facility partnership criteria and other notes regarding these opportunities. And finally, each of the review area sections provide short-term, which is 1 to 5 year, and long-term 6 to 15 year recommendations to address the accommodation issues that we've identified. So these would be capital projects such as new schools, additions, pupil accommodation reviews, school boundary reviews, and program reviews, as well as schools where we have underutilized spaces.
All right, being cognizant of the time, I might just skip to the end here. So in terms of the next steps, as we indicated, so we have our consultation on Monday nights. Afterwards, we'll come back to the Board of Trustees with a verbal information report to receive any additional information or comments from following your review, or if you have any other matters you would like to discuss. Afterwards, we'll be bringing this back at the June 5th meeting for a approval in principle. What this approval in principle means is just saying it's the overall scope and the long-term forecast that we have for this plan. This does not in any way supersede any of the Ministry of Education or board policies that require us, or that we're required to follow in order to commence a process or implement a process. So we're still going to go through the same procedures in bringing this forward too. This is just more of a large scope plan for the board. Thank you for your time.
Any questions at all? No? Roxana?
And there's always the executive summary.
A lot of work. Thank you very much. We're moving on? Okay. Thank you. All right, so now we are going to information items 10.1, student trustee update. Trustee Anna Maria.
Thank you. I'd first like to begin with the student trustee elections, which Student Senate had overseen just the past week, and I apologize for my voice. I'm getting over sickness. So Ingrid, Christina, and I, Christina sends her regards for not being here, are pleased to announce next year's student trustee candidates. So they are Will Trellebaugh from Holy Trinity as the Oakville trustee, Stephanie Cisco, Assumption, representing Burlington, and Denzel Herrero from John Vanier, representing the North. I think I can speak on all three of us when we say that we're very excited to help them transition to this role, and we're sure they'll do great things with this position next year. And we're excited to see them bring their unique skills, insights, and advocacy to the board table. Christina and I also had the pleasure of attending the OXTA AGM this past weekend and participating in many interesting workshops, keynotes, and networking with Ontario Catholic trustees from across the province. And all three of us would also like to extend our congratulations to Ms. Antomasi for becoming a director once again for this year.
Finally, we have begun planning our Catholic Education Week initiative under the theme of Renewing the Promise. Each school will be running a site-based initiative, whether focusing on education and awareness of Catholic education within itself. Also, I would like to add that as we announce the next year's student trustees, it's got me thinking a lot about my role and kind of why I was a student trustee. And I am here as the voice of the students. I am here as the connecting factor between what is happening in our schools and what happens around this table. And I think I would be failing our students if I didn't bring it to the attention of the board, because this is what the students are saying. On April 20th, multiple high schools across our board staged walkouts in protest of the motion 61-18. Students stood up and walked out of class as a way of showing their support for continuing funding to many valuable charities that our board donates to. The walkouts are executed differently at different schools, whether done through creating signs or gathering on the football field to chant "Charity is Catholic." The message that the students were trying to send was clear. Personally, I want to say that I am proud of our student body for their ability to be active and engaged students in their community, and for taking the initiative and having the leadership to stand up for what they believe in.
Thank you, Ingrid. Thank you, Anna Maria. Yes, we did get a good turnout at some of our high schools. Thank you. All right, so moving right along to Superintendent Cipriano with school educational field trips.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And you have before you the 3 approved field trips that will be taking place over the next several months. 2 of them are grade 8 trips to Ottawa and Quebec in June, and 1 is a trip that's taking place this week. We're wishing our 2 grade 12 Corpus Christi students all the best of luck as they compete in the OFSA Championship for badminton in Windsor this week. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Any questions for Superintendent Cipriano? No? All right, we're moving right along. 10.3, update on the release of the 218-219 grants for student needs, the GSN. Superintendent Nagoy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Since our board meeting on April 17, the Ministry has released the remaining documentation with regards to the grants for student needs for 2018-19. And the report before you today, on the first page, it contains a link to the Ministry of Education, to the Ministry's education funding that contains all of these documents. The documents released included the board-by-board projections, which are included in this report as well, the technical paper, the education finance information system forms, the capital and special education memoranda, as well as easy-to-follow guides for understanding the grants for student needs and special education funding. As I said before, all of these are available on the link provided for trustees to review, and we are marching along in putting all of our information through the system so that we can provide a first draft of the budget at the next board meeting on May 15. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Superintendent Nagoy? No? Okay. Great job. Thank you. Moving right along, miscellaneous information. 11.1, you have the minutes of the March 5th, 2018 SEAC meeting. And we have, 6 pieces of correspondence there. So please do take note of those. There's some very interesting information in those. The open question period, we didn't have anything. Okay, so we will in a few minutes, trustees, be moving back in camera because we have a couple of items to finish off. We won't be needing our student trustees, so you can get to go home early. Other trustees do not. And we thank everyone who came here this evening. We appreciate your time.
Madam Chair, I have an item on the agenda that I'm waiting to be recognized for.
Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot your notice of motion, didn't I? Yes, heaven forbid. I had it on the wrong side of the paper. Notice of employment salary grid. Go ahead.
Through you, I was proud to support Trustee Marai's effort to maintain fiscal responsibility at this board and supported the 2.6% pay envelope increase. But I think it's equally important to honor the contracts that were signed in good faith with our supervisory officers. So I'm bringing back my motion following the results of other school boards who have subsequently reinstated the funding or the pay packets for senior officers. So I'm bringing back this motion. Be it resolved, whereas the Halton Catholic District School Board received ongoing funding from the Ministry of Education in relation to the commensurate salary grid movements of senior staff, but did not make payments according to the contract signed in good faith with board superintendents. And whereas other Ontario school boards have recently been obliged to repay those previously withheld amounts as required by the provincially mandated salary freeze, following legal proceedings on behalf of the superintendents, and as our board wishes to avoid similar proceedings. And whereas the HCDSB wishes to reiterate our commitment to adhere to all contractual commitments made in good faith, be it resolved that the HCDSB retroactively repay all contractual obligations of salary grid compensation increases that were withheld to the senior officers of the school board with interest of no greater than 5% per annum. So that is my motion, and I'd ask that perhaps as a board of trustees, we ask senior staff to provide some supplemental information on the recent decisions by other school boards who have made similar commitments to their superintendents.
Okay, maybe you could send that out so that we have it in plenty of time for the next meeting. You know, before the May 15th. Not bring it to the meeting, but send it out in an email if you can. Is that possible? Prior to the next meeting, so they have time to read it. Okay. Yeah, we'll get something concise. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. And you'll get that to Rosie? Okay. All right. Okay, thank you. Anything else? No? Okay. All right, well, thank you very much. And again, we thank everyone who came this evening. And student trustees, you can go home early.